All right. Well, we may as well make a start. So tonight's session will all be about coaching a domestic game and things you can do during timeout, for the game, after the game, and I've got a few little tips and hints that I would have liked to have had when I first started coaching. So we'll run through a few of those things, and I'll take you through our coaching toolkit that we've developed a few years ago that you can have a look at. It's a bit of a text that can help you coach and get through a game of what to do, what to say. So I'll share my screen. I want to share that one. Okay, I'll share the whole thing. All right. So here we are. So pretty much how to coach a domestic game of basketball, tips and hints to help you be the best coach possible. All right. So as I said, the way I want to break this up is I've got probably 2 slides of advice, that little things that I sort of go by that helps me in my coaching. I think I'm a far better coach now than I was when I first started, which is almost 13, 14 years ago. I wish I could go back and tell myself some things I know now, and I reckon I would have had a lot more success, and I think the players would have had a lot more success as well from that time. So, some things that I wish I knew before I started coaching. First one that I think's been really relevant the last few years that I've developed is try and remove your emotions from the game. If something doesn't go to plan, you've got to really have that poker face, and don't let anyone know that you're not happy or you're angry or frustrated, especially when you're coaching young kids or anyone you're coaching. They know when you're upset and disappointed, and they sort of feed off that. If you're arguing with refs, you're yelling at refs, I can guarantee you the first thing they'll do when they come off is like, oh, those refs, yeah, they're so bad, aren't they? So they're going to mimic whatever you do. You sort of set the tone. Also, I've found that, if you're coaching based off your emotions and you're really high and you're, riding, the wave of the game up and down, your head's not going to be in the right space to make good decisions and the right decisions for the team going forward. If you're worried about referee decisions, if you're worried about different things like that, that's not what your focus needs to be. Your focus needs to be on your team and what you do, to get your team through that game. That leads into the next one with your players feeding off your energy. If you come into a game and you're flat and low and can't be bothered, they're going to play the exact same way. So you've got to make sure that, you front up and before the game, you set the tone of how you're going to play. If you come there and you're energetic and you're ready to go, the kids will be like, oh, all right, let's do it. They'll feed off your energy that you have. What have I done here? Get rid of that bit. So if, however you're acting in that game, the players will feed off that and do something similar. One really important thing I find that when you get into the game is set small goals. Don't let win the game be a driving factor that determines your success as a team or as a coach. So I know in the past I've played games that I knew that we were not going to win. I knew that the other teams are way too good for us, or whatever it is, or they're just so far ahead in their development. So that was my job as a coach. So, okay, how am I going to keep these players engaged? And that was just setting small goals, So if we're playing a really good team, we'll say, all right, we're going to try and limit them each half. We want to limit them, or each quarter, we want to limit them to under 15 points. We don't want them to get that target. We don't want them to score 50 against us. Or if it's even bigger than that, the bigger boys, we say we don't want them to score 100. Set those targets. That, if they are scoring, you are getting beaten. That's fine, but you've got something to try and something's achievable. Because there's some teams out there who you will play, who you look at them and you know them. They might have a whole bunch of rep players, and you might have a lot of beginners. And you're like, well, it's going to take a lot for us to try and beat this team. So we'll say, okay, what small goals can we set? And it might be, as a team, it could be individual. You could set an individual target for each player. You could go up to one player and say, all right, that's their best player over there. I want you to try and make sure every single time that they're dribbling on their left hand, they're dribbling their opposite hand. That's their best shooter. They love to get layups. You got to try and make sure they don't get a layup today in this game, and try and limit them that way. So that way, at the end of the game, they step off the floor, and it's not like, oh God, look at the score, 80-4, we got smashed. Instead of doing that, they're like, wow, we hit those targets. That girl I was playing, or that guy I was playing on, didn't score a layup against me. Or I made that person dribble on their left hand the whole time. So if you can have kids walking away after they lost, feeling good about themselves, that's a real positive, and that's what you sort of want to be leading towards. Next one, have fun and make sure the players are doing the same. It's no secret that anyone performs better when they enjoy what they do. All right. If you're coaching a bunch of kids, if they don't enjoy what they do, number one, they're probably not going to come back. Number two, they probably end up hating basketball. So make sure that you're doing things to make sure they're having fun. And the main thing kids like doing is they want to be on the court, they want to be having a go, and they want to be with their friends. That's the main thing. Kids love to be working with their friends and in groups and things like that. So make sure that for your drills at training that, there's lots of stuff where they're involved with their friends doing group stuff like that. And you make it not too serious as well. If it's domestic basketball, we don't want to be too serious where we're saying we want win. It's about developing and getting better. Then the bottom here is one of my favorite quotes that I sort of really listened to and brought into my coaching, and that's never let yourself get too high or too low. And I heard that a couple of years ago, just from listening to a press conference with Brad Stevens, who coaches the Boston Celtics in the NBA. And a journalist was asking him, I think it was during a finals run, and they had a really bad game and then a really good game. They were horrible one game, and the next game they lit it up and they were amazing. And the journalist said to me, how do you do that? How do you sort of, get that turnaround? And his thing was, it's never let yourself get too high or too low. If you're, way up here after one good game and then you have a horrible game, that's a big drop down and you're going to feel it really bad. But, you have a really good win, you keep yourself leveled and balanced and don't go over the top. You still celebrate that win. That was a really good game. But, especially with kids and sport, it's going to be a wave. It's never just going to be just progressing up the whole time. You're going to go up and down, up and down. So riding those emotions is really important. And the last thing you want to do is let yourself get way up in the sky and then come straight back down. And that happens not just, week to week. That happens within a game. I can remember, perfect example, which relates to sort of not let yourself get too high or too low, and emotions. I remember coaching against, a few years ago, a Whittlesea team who really wanted to beat us. They never did, and they were really pumped too. And their coach and their players were all so hyped up to play against us. And you could just sense that in their huddle, if one thing went wrong, you could just see they'll beaten us. If they just kept on and kept level heads, they would have beaten us. But one thing went wrong, and they were up here, and they just dropped straight down. And you can see their confidence was just shot. And were able to beat them. It was in like a semi-final to go on. We did that just because their emotion level, and main factor behind that was their coach. He was a very emotional coach. Got involved. He got involved with the referees, always disputing things. He was very loud and aggressive, and also focused on those negative things, which sort of didn't really work well with the kids. Whereas, I was a little bit differently, which our players responded better to. So that's a really important lesson that I learned from coaching. That is, to take your emotions out of it, and you can think better and make better decisions, and never get too high or low. And that's week to week, and that's within a game. Another page here. when you step into a game, like, there shouldn't be anything major in a game that's different to the training. A lot of the stuff that you want to do in a game, you should be trying to replicate at your training sessions, because training is the most important part of learning how to play basketball. That's where you get the chance to sort of step on the court. You can show kids, you can demo it. You can say, look over here, look at that. You can stop play. You can move people around, and you can really get a chance to let them see what you're talking about, and take them out of the situation. Say, look at everything here. This is the decision you're going to make. Whereas in a game, you don't get that chance. It's fast paced, and by the time like a kid looks at us, say, oh, pass over there, before it's too late, they go to make that pass, and the defense is like, oh, they're going to pass it. They move. All right. And the kid looks at you like, oh, what happened there? And then the game's already gone. That opportunity's gone. So the most important thing within coaching is training. Training is where you do a lot of your skill work, and a lot of those lessons are learned. And then the matches are an opportunity where you get to put things into practice. All right. So, before you huddle at the start of the game, we'll talk about that later. We will discuss some of the things that you did at training. So, oh, we did this at training, so today we're going to make sure we're going to try and practice those things we did at training in our game. Next is rotate and give everyone an opportunity. Granted, on a team, there's going to be certain players who are a lot better than other players, but it's about giving every single player you've got an opportunity to play different roles and to also get on the court as well. There's nothing better I love seeing than, the tallest player you've got bringing the ball up the court, teaching them those skills, to be a versatile person. You might have your best dribbler, the person who can dribble past anyone. You can give that ball to that player and they can just dribble the whole length of the court and get a layup. No stress. That's great for that player. They're going to get better. But the four players around them, they ain't learning much. So it's about, well, how do you sort of give your other players opportunity, and how do you give that player you're teaching an opportunity to learn other skills? Because as you get later in your career, you need to be a bit versatile. And some kids, there's some kids I've caught under 12s who were playing as like our smallest players, and I'm coaching them again now when they're under 21s up there, and they're the tallest players. They're huge, and vice versa. There's some players who are tall at a young age and they didn't grow at all. So it's really important that those players learn a range of different positions on the court. They learn how to bring the ball up the court. They learn how to pass it in. They learn, to play on the outside of the key, inside of the key. They learn all these different sort of positions. So make sure you teach them all that opportunity. Next one in there is, I got this one from Melbourne United. Actually, it was Melbourne United coach, but it was the two coaches in our coaching in the NBL. It's the coach of Southeast Melbourne Phoenix and Cairns. They came out and ran like a clinic at Craigieburn, and they said for domestic coaches, they said this is a really important one, and that's tire your players out. And that simply means that when you play a game, make sure you play it at a fast pace. Encourage them to get up into the court really quick. Don't go back into that half court defense. Go up and apply that pressure and get a full court game going where kids are running up and down and they're getting some exercise and they're puffing. Because I know for a fact that kids never want to come off. I never want to come off when I played, but there were some times where I'm absolute guts out and I said, I need to come off. I want to come off. So if you can turn that subbing issue into, wow, it's really good when I get a sub to jump off because I'm spent. Whereas like, oh, do I have to come off already? All right, try and change that mentality. Try and make it a good thing to come off because you get to have your rest and get to go again and reload. Last little quote down here is from John Wooden. If you don't know John Wooden, Division I college coach at UCLA, invented probably one of the most famous offenses going around, that everyone still uses, Basketball Hall of Famer, one of the greatest coaches probably ever, they say. A lot of success, did a lot of great things. And one of his quotes there is, if we magnified blessings as much as we magnified disappointments, we'd be much happier. And what I take away from that is, in a game, we all do it. We all look at the mistakes we make and we emphasize those mistakes. Whereas sometimes change the way you look at things and look at the things you did well. What worked well for us in that game rather than disappointments. So I can guarantee you, even when I played, I could walk off the court and I could tell you every single mistake I made. I knew it. I didn't need anyone to tell me that I threw that ball away. I could tell you straight away, but I couldn't tell you all the good things I did. And that's a real big mindset thing. And kids these days are very focused on the negative things of, what didn't work. So trying to get them to look at what went well. That's something that I always bring up at the end of my games. We had that time after the game, we talked about what went well. So what did we do really well that game, either as a team or individually? And then we also talk about even better ifs. What can we do better next time to improve ourselves? So we're not looking at sort of like, Andrew threw that ball away then and it cost us a basket. We're not naming and shaming people. We're saying that next game we just need to look after the ball a bit better. We need to make sure we pass it a bit earlier. Take our time on our shots. They're the even better ifs. And what went well is like, all right, we really did this well. We played some really good pressure defense. We passed it ahead really well. We got lots of open shots. With my under 10 girls, that's always what went well is we're getting lots of shots. And the flip side is none of those shots are going in. We're missing every single one. We're missing layups. They're going from side to side to side to side. But we could say that, come on, girls, take your time, put the shots in. I could say that, but I'm pretty sure the girls know they're missing their shots. So I pretty much say, what's great? Keep getting those shots. Keep shooting the ball. How many can we miss in a row? Surely we're eventually going to make one. All right. So it's just that mindset thing. They're doing the right thing. They're getting good shots. They're just not putting them in. So we just keep saying, keep trying, and then we might give them some little feedback about what they're doing wrong with their shots. They might be rushing. We might say, just slow down a little bit. Keep looking for those shots. Next thing is I want to talk through is our coaching toolkit, which is linked to our website. So I've just got a link here that I'll click onto, and hopefully you can still see my screen, still following me. Yep, good. So if I just go to this is just our website, our home screen down here. If we just go to our Coach's Corner, this is a really good resource to use. And this has just got all our sort of like different drills that you can use as well, which we're continuing to add to. And then just in this top paragraph here where it says Coaching Toolkit, click on that one. That opens up a little A4 document, 2 sides, about just different things that you can really use game day to help you coach your team. All right, so there's just some stuff at the top here, pretty much going over some of the stuff we said just before about rotating players as evenly as possible, how we want to develop, we don't want to just develop basketballs, we want to develop good people as well, good sportsmanship, good skills like that. And we're not also about the winning as well. We're not about winning games and flogging teams. We're about developing good players and good quality coaches for lifelong ballers, which is what we want. So this toolkit, I can't take credit for. I did make it and put our logo on it as well. And I was looking at it today, and even in here, it looks like there's no spaces between words. That's just something that's come up wrong in the formatting under the website. It does that. So I do use spaces between words, but we'll look at fixing that. So I stole this from Horsham basketball back when I was playing a long time ago. We played a Saturday game, and there was like domestic before it, and they had these just on clipboards just hanging above just the benches that anyone could pick up and use and look at and adapt. And I thought, what a great idea. So I took a photo of it and then adapted it to what suits us. And something I straight away used in my rep and everything was this here, was the rotations. And I still use this now with when I do coach, especially my girls, and if I'm coaching a rep, I'll and I've done it a few times now where I know the flow of when to make the correct subs. But there's different sets here. You'll probably have like 6, 7, 8 players on the court usually, and here's just some different strategies of how to rotate each player. So look at the top here, it just says give each player a number. So it's got here, number 1 is James, 2 is Cameron, 3 is George, 4 is Ben, 5 is Kevin, 6 is Luke, and 7 is Daniel. So give each player a number, and then on here it says the start of the game, who is where. So if you've got 6 players, well, at the start of the game, James starts off, and then after the 16-minute mark, James comes off with Cameron, and you make that sub. 13 minutes, next sub. 9 minutes 30, next sub, and so on. And then at halftime again, it's back to James having his rest at the halftime. All right. With the 6 players doing it this system, all players will sit on the bench 2 times, and we'll see equal court time. And what's a struggle is, it happens to me sometimes as well when I'm coaching, is you get there and you're like, oh, I've got to get you back on. I forgot about this kid here. And you got to try and, whose turn to come off is it? Whereas if you have it written down, it's just a structure you can follow. When I first started doing it with my under 12s, it actually got really, really good because they started learning the structure of when they come on. And then it got to the point where, I wasn't really making the subs. It was on them. They knew when it got to, when it got to the 13-minute mark, Cameron knew he was, I've got to bring off George now. I'll go and make that sub, and he'll come up to me and say, Lockie, can I just make my sub now? It's my turn. I'll go, yep, no worries, thanks. So then I can do my job of coaching and watching the game, and they helped me do that. Even if not, if you don't trust the players to do that, don't want your players to do that. It's have a team manager, have an assistant, have a parent who just sits there and give them this sheet and give them the numbers of each person, and they can help you get those rotations happening. And it's the same with 7 players, the exact same thing here. For a 7-player rotation, all players will sit on the bench 3 times, except for number 7. And then number 7 only does it 2 times, and then you just rotate who number 7 is. A team of 8, same sort of thing. They all get equal time on that one. There's one I use for a 9-player rotation as well, which I can tell you about, but I just don't have it written down. But in a 9-player rotation, it's a group of 3 get a little bit more time, and you just rotate those people out each week. So I know sometimes my girls' team have that same thing. We've had 9, and so I had a group of 3 that rotated through. So if I had those 3 girls, I would have 2 on, 1 off, and then the other 6 girls would rotate evenly. And then I'll just rotate who those 3 girls were each week. So then they're all getting that fair run.
Okay, I'm curious, with the 9-player rotation, Does it sub 4 on and 4 off at one time?
No, usually it's when I do it, it's the 3. The 3 have a separate rotation. So the group of 3 with the 1 off there, they'll come off separately every
so they get
say 5. And then the 3s, I've done it differently. It depends how I'm feeling. I could do it 3 on, 3 off, or you could do it a 2 and a 1. But usually I use a similar method to sort of like a 7-player one, whereas I sub every sort of 4 minutes. Every 3 to 4 minutes, make a sub and then make a change like that.
Yeah.
So no one's sitting too long.
I'd love to have a look at your 9 one.
Yeah. I just don't have it written down. But I can write it up. I can write it up tomorrow, and I can send it through with everything I send through.
That'd be awesome, mate.
Yeah, because that one I use that one regularly. Sorry, guys, just excuse me for one sec. My computer's just going. What? So
I think a lot of our domestic teams have 9 players as well. So
I can even look to. I think originally I didn't have it added on because it didn't fit on the page to make it a 2-page document. I spread it over, and the formatting was not working really well. So it went with sort of just these 3. But we can get that up and about and get people to have a look at that one as well. And then if you've got a 10-player rotation, that's just straight swaps with the player. And then if you go older age groups, you can have a 12-player rotation. I can't help you with that. I'm still working that one out. How to rotate 12 players. That's absolute hell. Now we get to the stuff about on the game day. So this is before the game. So make sure arrive early. Encourage your players to get there, 10 to 15 minutes, before the game. There's nothing worse than having kids roll through in the warm up, and that's good for the kids' preparation and for your preparation as well. Because if you're using one of these, these lists here, and you go, oh, okay, got my 7 plays here. I'll start giving everyone a number and start work at who's on where, and then suddenly, little Jimmy rolls in. You're like, oh, it's 1 minute before the game, and now I've got 8, and that throws my rotations right out. I've got to redo that. So if you can get them in the habit of getting there at a decent time, 10 minutes before the game, that gives you time to prepare and gives the kids time, to warm up and be ready to play. Warm up. So the aim is to get the bodies ready for the game. Simple layups with the rebounder. 2-on-2, 3-on-3, drills like that. If we look at all the drills that we've looked at recently, you want to try and use as many of those elements as you can. So, like, you want to try and get some passing in there, get some shooting in there. You want to get some running in there, dribbling, some defense. If you can get all 5 of those sort of things in there, some decision making, you're preparing those kids really well for a game. If you're just doing like shots from the foul line, the kids are warming up their hands, but there's not much else. If you can work out something where they're going to make a pass to someone, and they go do a layup, so they're going to pass, they're going to dribble, they're going to lay up. It's more match-like what's going to happen. And then give some clear instructions. So about a minute before the game starts, call your players in and say, come on in, guys. And this is where you talk to them. You say, okay, and this is where you go through here, and you'll say, all right, so, we've got 7 players. So James and Cam, you're going to start on the bench with me today. And then you might say, I'm going to rotate every 4 minutes. So they know what's coming. So they know they're going to get that fair run. And you might give them some simple instructions. And this is where it might link to your training session. A training session, you might have been looking at, making sure we're passing that ball, getting that pass off nice and early. So this is where you might give that feedback and say, all right, guys, today in our game, let's make sure that we're getting that pass off as early as we can. Get that rebound and pass ahead. And on defense, we want to make sure that we stay with our player. Don't get lost. And that's those simple sort of simple goals, those small goals we spoke about a bit earlier as well. That's where you bring that in now. And then those instructions you have at the start of the game, throughout the game, at your timeouts, at half time, at the end of the game, keep referring back to those same things. So it's consistent throughout. Usually before the game, I usually have dot points. I usually have 3 or 4 dot points that I say that we want to make sure we do. And it's been a long time. It's been a while since I've coached. But usually what I say is we want to make sure, with my girls, I always say we want to make sure we get pass ahead. We always say eyes up. That's my one. I would say eyes up doesn't necessarily mean just pass the ball. It means get your head up and have a look. If there's someone ahead of you, they have to get the ball. That's our rule. If there's someone ahead of you, they must have the ball because they're further down the court. That's one we always say. Next thing we may say is we want layups. So we say pass the ball ahead, get layups, and our third one is find your player. find one. So there's three things that we'll always refer to throughout the game. So there's a timeout in the first half. The girls will come in, we'll sit down, have a drink, and I'll say, okay, how are we going with our eyes up? Are we getting our eyes up? And then I might go back and find some examples. You know, I might say, oh, Chloe, there was a really good time earlier where you got that rebound, you saw someone ahead, and you made that pass. That was fantastic. You might say, another one is like, oh, I really love the way, you know, Piper, that you found your player straight away and you went straight to it. That's excellent. You know, you're addressing those same things every single time. So it's consistent. And then your players can understand that consistency and they can work towards those goals. You know, with my youth band on the other hand, we don't have three. You know, we have different rules that we adjust by. So we have about 6 or 7 things that we look at and we say we want to do this, 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 and this. But for them, they're a bit older. That changes game to game of what we want to tackle for that one. So I'd say those clear instructions are left consistent. During the game, so there's 2 parts of the game. It's offense when you have the ball and defense when they have the ball. Here's just some you know, examples of things you could use within your game. So outlet pass, that's similar to that one I said before about making that pass early. If the opposition shoot the ball and you get a rebound, we say the outlet pass is that pass straight away. So you get that rebound, you make that outlet pass, and you're off going towards your basket. That's a really important one that you might look at as well. You might have a rule of saying you want your players to dribble to the middle of the court. Middle of the court, you've got all your options open. You can go left, you can go right, you can go wherever you want. If you're on the sideline, you're sort of pigeonholed. You can't really go anywhere. It's easy to defend someone down the sideline. Eyes up, which is the personal one I use. And if you're going to use eyes up, as I said before, it's really important that you stress to your players, when you say eyes up, you don't just throw it. My eyes up, when I say eyes up, I mean you're looking down, get your head up and have a look. You know, because there's a few times I've yelled eyes up and they're dribbling down and just go, what? And they throw it and it just goes straight to the opposition. It's just get their head up. And because mostly with opposition players, hear someone say eyes up, they're like, well, they want to pass it. I'm going to go cover that person who's ahead of them. So make sure they know that. You might have something about ball movement and spacing. You know, there's nothing worse than when there's a whole scrum around the ball. You might want your players to spread out, find some space. I know I've done that in the past that, you know, we're past the ball and I'll tell someone, I'll say, come over here, and I'll point to them. I say, come stand in this deep corner down here. And they look at you funny, like, why am I standing over here? And then as soon as that ball comes in, you say, run to the basket, and they get a wide open shot. And that's encouraging that spacing, you know, moving that ball quick through hands and staying spread out. Because the more space you have on the court, the more open space that the ball carrier has to dribble, and we can make those passes and play a team game. Defense, you might have I always have something to do with man-to-man defense. You know, and I used to always say man up. That used to be my thing I always say, but I've sort of changed that since I started coaching some girls as well. I didn't think it was right to say man up when they're not men. So now I've changed that to, I say find one, find a player. So our one is we find one straight away. So once we score, you know, we'll shout, now find one, find your player, closest person, and we go match up. And you might also have something about rebounding as well. But that's, you know, these things are each to their own, whatever you want.
Girl up doesn't have the same ring to it.
Sorry? True?
Girl up doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, it doesn't. And that's why I messed around with a few different things I want to say. So I just said, you know what, something I could try and use for everything I coach is find one. So, you know, I always felt weird when I was coaching the girls, and I'm like, oh, man up, man up. And I'm like, that just sounds funny. But now I've just changed my vocabulary to find one. So that's sort of what I go with now. So find one's my go-to word.
Okay.
Last thing we talk about is sportsmanship, and this is really important. It's crucial that, you know, coaches, spectators, referees, everyone shows great sportsmanship towards each other at all times, because without each other, the game doesn't happen. Without us coaches, there's no one to coach the game. Without the players, we've got no one to coach. Without the refs, we've got no one to officiate the game. All right. So we're going to make sure that regardless of what happens, you know, some of my good friends are referees, and I think they've stitched me up a few times with calls, but I don't let that bother me. It's just we can get over it, and it's just like everything. You know, referees have bad games, just like coaches and players do. You know, that they're allowed to make mistakes. They're human, and we try to dwell on that. So I always make sure, no matter how angry I am with a referee and how much I dislike them or whatever they've done, I always go up and I make sure after the game I shake their hand. I say, you know, thank you very much, because once again, one, it's the right thing to do, and number two, it sets that role modeling for your players as well. If they see that, you know, this referee has crucified you and made all these bad calls, if you're going up and saying no hard feelings, thanks for the game, and they're thinking, well, that's the right thing to do, and that's sort of what you're going to do as a coach, as a role model. And then also on here as well, you look at, you know, if your team's winning by a large margin, if you're killing the game, you look at, all right, I could stay up here and I could keep my players up in the front court, steal the ball and keep getting layups, another layup. But number one, what are we learning? And number two, what's the opposition learning? So think about ways to sort of bring your team back and you know, teach them different ways to defend. You know, and one thing that I try and do, and I try and sort of, you know, if we do get a lead, bring our team back and we have players in different parts of the court. And then when their player comes into that space, that's when they man them up. So it's not a zone where they're guarding space. They're waiting past a certain part on the court. And then once their player crosses a line on the court, we usually use the netball line and inside the 3-point line. So once their player steps into that, they're going to go find their player and stand with them. You know, and then another thing you can do down here is also you might designate a different ball dribbler. You know, you might have your gun dribbler. You say, all right, capture, you get on the other end of the court, and we'll pass you the ball down the very end, and you have someone who bring the ball up. Give them a chance to do that. You might have something where you might have, say, all your players have to shoot with their opposite hand, dribble with their opposite hand. I've seen some teams before who are up a big margin. They play netball on the back half of the court. So when they pass the ball in, they can't dribble, and they've got to take one bounce, or they have to netball it. So they've got to share that ball around. You know, there's all different things like that you can do where it's teaching, you know, spacing and passing rather than just dribbling up and crucifying a team who you're already clearly better than. So, you know, when you're in that position, you know, I sort of strongly encourage you to look at your team and say, all right, how can I still test our players and you know, challenge them and not crucify the other team, you know. So I'd look at all those different things you can do. That's pretty much all I wanted to go through today. Is there any questions that anyone has that they want to ask or go through now? I know Drew said a couple of things throughout, but anyone else got anything else they want to discuss or bring up or ask? I'm an open book. Doesn't look like it. That's all good. All right. Well, if that's all, guys, thanks for your time. Have a really good night, and I'll speak to you all next week. Oh, sorry, before I go, next week, keep a lookout for a post on Facebook because we might have to change the time because we've got some coaching interviews happening on the Wednesday night. We may have to make this session a bit earlier, or have a different link for it or something. So please keep your eyes out and have a look at your emails on our Facebook for any changes to that. All right. Thanks, guys.